So what if you could stop a fight in the 3 seconds before it even really starts? We're about to break down a really powerful technique that can fundamentally change how you handle arguments. And it's not by avoiding them, but by mastering the absolute most critical moment inside of them.
Just think about this for a second. It's an incredibly powerful idea. Most breakups happen in the 3 seconds before you even open your mouth to speak. This really highlights the huge stakes that are packed into these tiny, almost invisible moments. It's not always the weeks of resentment, but that split-second decision to just detonate that does the real damage.
And this is the number that matters. 3 seconds. I know, it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but this tiny little window can be the bridge that gets you over the chaos, and it could even save your most important relationships.
We've all been here, right? Standing right on this metaphorical cliff edge. You feel that heat rise up in your chest. Your partner says that one thing that always gets you, and your mouth opens to say something defensive or hurtful or permanent. Just one wrong step, one wrong word, and the whole thing can go tumbling down. So to master that moment on the cliff, we've got to understand what's actually happening inside our own heads, because the real battle, it's often not with the other person, it's with our own biology. The thing responsible for this has a name, the amygdala hijack. Just think of your amygdala as your ancient lizard brain, right? Its whole job is to spot tigers in the grass. The problem is, it's not very sophisticated. So in a heated argument, it mistakes your partner's criticism for a tiger, a literal life-or-death threat, and it just smashes the panic button. And this breaks down that internal fight perfectly. During a hijack, the amygdala, your panic button, floods your system with stress hormones and, get this, it literally cuts off the blood supply to your modern logic center, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that's responsible for empathy, for thinking about consequences, and poof, it just goes completely offline.
And the result of that? It's pretty startling, actually. When you're hijacked by anger, you literally become temporarily less intelligent. It's true, you can't listen, you can't reason. All you can do is attack or defend. And that is exactly why we say things in the heat of the moment that our rational, calm brain would never, ever even consider.
Okay, so now that we know the problem is basically a biological one, let's get to the solution. Let's see how we can build this 3-second bridge that takes us from that impulsive reaction to a much smarter strategic response. Now, this is the science behind the whole technique. Neuroscientists have found that while the chemicals from an emotion can kind of linger, the peak intensity, that initial chemical explosion in your brain, is incredibly short. If you can just survive that initial blast without doing anything, you can get control back.
You see, a 3-second pause isn't just waiting around, it's an active process. It's called cognitive inhibition. By pausing, you are consciously forcing your body to send blood flow away from the panicked amygdala and back to the logical prefrontal cortex. You are, and this is the key, performing a manual reboot on your own brain.
This all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But how do you actually do it when you're seeing red and every single fiber of your being is screaming to lash out? Okay, let's get practical.
The process is a really simple 3-step mental discipline that you can practice and get better at. First, you've got to learn to recognize that feeling. You know, the heat in your chest, the tension in your jaw, that's your trigger. Then, before you say a word, you engage a physical anchor. And finally, you just wait. 3 seconds. That's it.
And don't just count in your head. Trust me, your emotional brain will just scream right over that. Instead, use a real physical action. Looking up actually engages a totally different part of your brain. Or pressing your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Or just squeezing your thumb. These create a physical sensation that distracts you from that emotional storm. And in that 3-second gap you've just created, you use this filter. This one question is what separates destruction from construction. Because, you know, lots of things might be true. Like, you always leave your socks on the floor. Okay, maybe that's true. But is saying it right now in that tone of voice actually helpful? Is it going to solve the problem? Probably not. So when you master this pause, you're doing way more than just calming down. You're making a fundamental choice about the entire nature of your disagreements. You're choosing to shift from combat over to conflict. Look, the difference between healthy, thriving relationships and toxic, failing ones, it isn't the absence of fighting. Conflict is totally normal. The real difference is the presence of the pause, the ability to have productive conflict instead of just destructive combat. In that 3-second window, this is the choice you are making. Are you choosing combat, where the only goal is to win and the result is always destruction? Or are you choosing conflict resolution, where the goal is to actually solve the problem and the result can be a deeper connection?
So, you have the tool now, you understand the science, and you know the steps. The only question left is, which relationship in your life are you going to save first?